More recently, the Secretary of Finance, who used to be the governor of the central bank, issued a statement that the government now will try to continue the tax reform packages that was initiated by the Duterte government. Chief among this is FIFITA, which is an acronym I think that's very lefty. It has to do with passive income, financial intermediaries, and tax. What is that all about? And what does it mean to ordinary people?
Yes. So essentially, from a competitiveness perspective, it allows us to become more competitive relative to our neighboring countries. Because if you compare the tax rate, not the tax base, tax rate relative to our Asian neighbors, we continue to be the most expensive among all those countries. So one of the features of PFITA is to lower the withholding tax rate, for example, from 20 to 15%, among others. No? So that will allow us, at least from that perspective, become more competitive relative to our competition and relative to the other region. So it's about gaining better competitive advantage. And then number two, another major feature of PFITA would be in relation to simplification of the overall tax regime or tax scheme. Because under the current situation, there are different tax rates, and then you apply it to different types of tax bases, right? So we don't want to make this into a tax lesson, but essentially, it's really trying to simplify and rationalize the tax base and the tax rate so that there will be less administration costs when it comes to trying to pay taxes. And by trying to minimize any admin costs, at the end of the day, it will always result to higher tax revenues and hopefully tax collections.
What potential passive income are we talking about that might be covered by this initiative? Has that been discussed, or do you have any inputs on that?
The most obvious ones would be in general, it's on capital income. Right. So, for example, the interest that you earn on your deposit, for example. So that would come into play.
Interesting.
And as well as other sources. No? So, and again, given we're in the Philippines, it's not necessarily all, but at least those with banking products will definitely benefit from that.
And I don't know if this is related to that, but I'm not a tax person. But but there's been a mismatch, at least in several years past, between the top taxpayers and those who are identified as the wealthiest people in the country. And the way I understand it is because this tax is really imposed on income earned, right? Whereas the valuation of the most wealthy people is based on total assets. So is this going to maybe help remedy that situation where we will see many of those famous names that make the top tier of the most wealthy Filipinos also become top taxpayers because of this passive income initiative, or am I totally off here?
Well, but I think looking at the top taxpayers list, at least the older versions that I've seen, people in the top 20 list are already right. A lot of our tycoons.
So there's been some improvement there.
Yes, for sure. Yes, but I think another area that has likewise been trying to improve on would be on capital markets as a whole. So directly related, well, it's not directly related, but still another law that we're likewise trying to push would be the Capital Markets Development Act. So under the Duterte administration, it passed lower house. But then it wasn't approved at the Senate level.
I see.
And we didn't have enough time. So that's another area. So for passive income from income from your capital income, there's some improvement there. But in general, capital markets would be the overall theme that one is trying to improve on.
How would that work? Is it going to be based then on the valuation of this capital or something else? I'm sorry, I'm asking a tax 101 question here.
But it's specifically on the tax rate.
Okay.
Tax rate. So again, I don't have the complete table with me as far as PFITA is concerned, but the tax base would be simplified, and then the tax rate would likewise be simplified, and for some rates it will actually be lowered to increase competition.
As you said, to make the Philippines more competitive. Is there another component of that? The FI is financial intermediaries, which suggests to me banks, of course, and does that include stock markets or what else?
It will also include those items, but details of which.
You're still waiting. Yes. You're still waiting for them.
Yes, and maybe it would be good if you're able to invite
for development. But how big of a deal is this? Is this something that can be a game changer? Do you see any controversies, perhaps on the political arena with regard to these initiatives? What's your sense? Or is it too complicated for ordinary Filipinos to really dig deep into this?
Actually, if you read through the law, it will definitely benefit in general most Filipinos because of lower tax rates. Right, so that's number one. And for me, given the economic level of Filipinos, we're not necessarily first world, right? We're not first world. So every improvement in the tax scheme would be of big help for the rest of Filipinos. And I think it can also redound to increased inclusion, right? Which is another major theme that the government, specifically the central bank, BSP, has likewise been pushing. So it will definitely improve as far as inclusion and improving the overall financial, standing of Filipinos.
Right, I'll get to that in a minute. But, the other initiative that was mentioned by Secretary Jokno was, of course, the tax on single-use plastics. So you're stepping back on PFITA and you're trying to, I guess, make it up with something that, I guess, that has also some environmental impact.
Correct.
Does FINEX have a position on adding taxes for single-use plastics?
Officially, FINEX itself, we do not have yet. But in general, I can base it more on at least how I interact with a lot of business people. At the end of the day, we're trying to change behavior. Right? So really more on the environment side, aspect number one.
Right.
So by taxing, that single-use plastic types of assets, you will then reduce or diminish the use. And then maybe technology can help so that multi-use types of packages.
Something more sustainable.
Yes.
But I guess if the intent is to generate more revenue, I guess these initiatives are fine, but there's also the argument that you should widen the tax base, right? And not simply impose additional taxes, which really burdens only those who are complying, right? So what are some of the things that FINEX, or maybe some of the things you've heard from government, that are, possibly going to address that issue, widening the tax base?
Correct. So actually, one of the, I'll try to connect it to inclusion. Right? So at the end of the day, you tax an income. Right? So one of the major initiatives by BSP and even by FINEX is all about financial inclusion, right? So part of it is really giving them better access to investment types of securities, right? So maybe using an e-portal or making it easier for them to invest in other types of securities. So it's really from that perspective, making sure that more Filipinos will increase their income base. And then to the point where you can already tax, right? Based on the current tax structure or regime of the country. So it's not really a single step wherein you just increase the tax base or the tax rate, but rather trying to uplift the overall income capabilities of more Filipinos, so that they would then graduate, right,
Right.
into that reality.
Right.
So from the, let's say, from the BIR's perspective or from the government's perspective, there are more qualified Filipinos who will then reach that taxable stage,
Right.
so to speak.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to capture. I
Right.
mean, for example, that's directly related to what we're doing in the social involvement committee. We're trying to teach the really small to micro enterprises how to improve financial literacy, right? How to improve revenue generating abilities, and then thirdly and last, how to then potentially control expenses. So combination of those things will hopefully improve their bottom line, and then, so that will then contribute, to the total base that the government can naturally and rightfully tax. So it's really from a sort of grassroots, right? Grassroots trying to move everything up the value chain or in the income level, so that then there will be a higher base.